Hello and happy, I think today's Thursday, right? To
Yes.
everybody tuning in. I am Clarissa Constantine. I'm the founder of the Parent Tween Connection, and I'm super excited to have Helen Panos with us today from Dynamis Learning. She and her team out in Atlanta support students locally, but also online with an array of academic supports and SAT, ACT, prep, some of the younger admissions exam prep as well. And so first of all, Helen, good morning, and thanks for being with me today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, a quick housekeeping tip for anybody listening in, or for folks who are tuning in, if you are in our Facebook group or if you're tuning in via LinkedIn, if you've got questions as we chat, type them in. Either comment under the video in the Facebook group or on the LinkedIn page, and I can see those as we go. So if you've got questions about what Helen and I are chatting about, just toss them out to us and we can address them. That's one of the reasons that we do these interviews live and then upload them to our podcast. So this month, in Parent Tween Village and Parent Tween Connection, we are talking, one of our topics is creativity. And so, Helen, we're talking today about creativity and thinking critically. And then after we're done with our first conversation, just for folks in Parent Tween Village, we're going to be talking about how creativity can help kids gain access to the gifted program. So more on that. But let's start. You wanted to talk about how to help kids learn to think more creatively. By helping them to explore different ideas and solutions to situations. Let's start there. Okay. Why is that something you wanted to chat about, and how do we help families do that?
Well, I think it's a very important thing and concept, skill that is not being taught in schools, first of all. It's pretty much content driven in schools. They don't have time to really teach skills as much. And this I would consider a skill. It's something that has to be developed over time. It's not like everybody's born with it, let's say. It's kind of like organizational skills, right? Not everybody's great at organizing. So a lot of kids are not thinking outside the box. They're not thinking creatively. It's very black and white typically. Intelligent children are not doing that.
And I've also seen, certainly as kids get locked into an idea, especially like, students that have ideas of, I want perfect grades, I want a perfect 4.0 GPA. They do what they need to do and they fall in line with the expectations of what's going to be on the test and whatnot. And my experience in working with students in a similar realm to you is that can actually stifle creativity as well, because they're going after the grade, not the process.
True. Yes. And in this day and time, I think it's important that kids think outside the box and they don't just take what they see and hear at face value, like start thinking. It helps with strategic thinking, right? And I find that to be very valuable, whether you're running your own businesses like we are, or even as working for someone, right, in the future. I mean, they're going to want people who can think differently than everybody else.
Absolutely. Well, and another note that I want to toss in for folks who are listening, we had a conversation with Nate Clayberg, who's one of Parent Tween's trusted experts, on Monday. He is a career coach. And one of the points that he made is that data or research that he read indicates that 75% of the jobs that will exist in 2035, not even a full 11 years from now, 75% of those jobs don't even exist yet.
Yeah. Wow. That's so high.
Right? It's unfathomable. But like the creativity, AI, all of the things that are coming up are result of creative thinking. And so I think you're wanting to discuss this today, just a few days after I had that conversation with Nate, is very well timed, because if we don't even know what those jobs are going to be, we don't know that the content, to your point, that they're learning in schools is even really applicable. But that's a whole different conversation. How can we support families in fostering this creativity and these thinking skills?
I would say, so the most basic way to do it from home is you just ask kids questions. Even if they say to you, you ask them, here's the common question parents will ask, right? If they pick them up from school or they get in from catching their bus, they'll say, well, how was your day? And they'll usually say, fine, or good, or not so good, whatever. And then you just take that at face value. But instead, you should be probing them and asking them for more details, right? Number one, kids do not like to give details or examples of anything. So even just doing that will help with writing, another very important skill that I'm seeing a lot of kids lacking, especially not to pick on boys, but boys tend to be more not as vocal, right? So if you have a boy, especially them, because we're seeing that in my tutoring business, that they're not vocalizing and then they don't write it down on paper. So asking examples like, will you be more specific? What about your day did you like or dislike? Get them to say things to you. Can you give me more details about that? Can you show me an example or give me some demonstration or something like that? You're going to have to take a little bit more time. I mean, as parents, we're busy, right? But you're going to have to just take a few extra minutes to ask these questions. And if they're going to demonstrate something, they want to show you something that happened at school, maybe in science or whatever, then have them do that. Because that does start to foster the creativity and the critical thinking we're talking about here. And ask questions like, was that a problem? Did you solve it? Why is this a situation in the first place? All of these are very important skills as grown-up adults here that, we need not only in the workplace, just to survive, and all the social media things, and being able to identify what's fake, what's true, all of these are important skills to help with those kinds of things that I think we're seeing ourselves getting into a little bit of trouble here, but just believing everything we read, let's say.
Well, and I remember back in the day when I was taught how to write an essay was to think about the 5 W's and H: who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Right.
So I think to add on to that, if I may, reminding folks who are tuning in that whatever the situation is, like to your question, like what did you, who did you hang out with on the playground today? If we're talking about younger kiddos, right? Or maybe older, what did you do during lunch? Who did you spend time with at lunch today? What did you talk about? What are they concerned about? How did you react? Why did you feel that way? If we go back to just those things that we learned in like 4th grade about how to write an essay, those are some foundational pieces that we can use in some of these probing questions. Yeah,
that's true. Yes. We have a 6th grader right now going to DC for spring break, and we made him do a web quest and had him look at all the different most popular museums and things like that to do in DC ahead of, I'm also having him journal his days because he's not going to remember. And I said, I want you to also say, how did you feel about what you saw that day? And he's going with a couple friends. So this is perfect timing if you're going on a vacation here soon because of spring break or in the summer. Just don't say, okay, we're going to relax, which is lovely, but have them take 10 minutes each night and do that. I mean, this is all important. This gets them talking and thinking. And like you said, revealing their emotions and feelings towards that. And you as a parent get to hear it and see it and read it, which is important to know.
And, I see a lot of my friends who are doing exactly like you're talking about, going on trips right now. How cool would it be to even do, like, if you're on TikTok, do a short TikTok, or on Instagram or Facebook, like do a short video with your kiddo. The same idea. The kids love to be on camera. I should say many kids love to be on camera. So what a cool way to do like a selfie video with them. Ask these questions, and then you're kind of archiving it for yourself along the way and for your family. Like those memories are going to keep coming up down the road.
That's exactly what I told a couple kids this week. Yeah. I did it on Facebook when I did my Greece trip a couple years ago. It's some work. Every night I'd go back to after the cruise, I'd sit there and document and put pictures out for my own self to document, but to show everybody else something that they're learning about Greece or whatever.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's another way to journal.
Absolutely. So, and I think so many people get caught in the, like, I have to write it down in a notebook. Like, no, you can journal on an apps, like a notes app on your phone or on your social media, or in an old fashioned, like write it out on paper journal. That's an option too.
And now let me add, be a role model, parents. You do it too. Because one of my parents said, I was Zooming with him and tutoring him, and she goes, I'm going to do it too. And that would be good, because then they will do it, and they won't give you a hard time about doing it.
So that's it. Again, exploring different ideas, the emotions and the who, what, where, when, why, how, asking the probing questions. How can we support kids in becoming more creative, solution oriented, like problem solvers?
Well, you see, it's about curiosity, really. So that it comes
Hmm.
back to that. And, that's again, I don't think we ever approach kids with these kinds of questions. We just ask them,
Hmm.
how was your day? Right. And that's okay to
Sure.
do that, but then ask them to say the details. Right.
Sure.
But you could go, I wonder what will happen if this happens or this, you know,
Oh,
like
okay.
take a water bottle and say, okay, if this wasn't a water bottle, what else could you use it for?
Hmm.
Get them to think outside the box and start. And that's
Hmm.
where the critical thinking then into the creative thinking, the problem solving, and then what would you
Hmm.
do if this happened? You know, so subtract this, divide that, it's kind of like that. Mix these together. If you're cooking,
Hmm.
and you're on
Hmm.
vacation and you're cooking, you could do that. You can use it with recipes as well. And then
Sure. All right. I don't have XYZ for the recipe. What else could we use instead?
right, and then if it comes out bad, then you could say, "Here's your problem solution. What could
Hmm.
we have done now differently that we could do it next time because obviously this didn't work."
And it's funny. I actually think of something that a friend of mine did. She has her kids are, they were middle school age, like late fifth grade, sixth grade, something like that. And she's a solo parent. Her husband is deceased, and she was dating this new guy, and she had to go in for a dental procedure, and she was going to have some kind of um, anesthesia or whatnot. And so she was early enough in the process of dating the new guy that she was like, do I really want him to see me in the immediate after effects of anesthesia? Or I personally was her alternative to potentially take her to the dentist. And she and I have a very, that relationship of like, we don't ever let each other live anything down. That's just kind of how
Mhm.
we roll. And so she went to her kiddos and she was like, okay, so here's my dilemma. I have to go in for this dental procedure. I'm going to be anesthetized. And if I ask Miss Clarissa to take me, if I say anything silly, it's going to become like part of our lore of our friendship and I'm never going to live it down. But if I ask the new guy to take me, like, I'm not sure he really wants to see that. Like, she took that very personal, like, this is what I'm dealing with as an adult. And it was
Mhm.
funny. But she asked the kids, like, what would you do? And her younger one, who is quite the character, was like, wow, mom, that really is quite the dilemma. I don't know what I would do. But I mean, there's an example that we can take like something from our adult life and just share it with them. Kids, I have found, are a lot more resilient and aware and come up with sometimes way
Mhm.
more creative than we can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can even take some of our adult situations within reason, certainly, right?
Mhm.
But then how does this build into resilience, Helen? I know that was another point that you wanted to discuss.
Well, I think when you have to work a little bit harder to be successful at something, right? That's what builds resiliency. It's
Mhm,
not just make it so simple, like, how was your day? Fine. Okay.
mhm,
And then you accept that as the answer. So there's no challenging them in a good way.
mhm,
Because if they're not being challenged in different ways, then how are they going to be resilient when they have to encounter something more difficult? They got to be able to
mhm,
push through and figure it out. And that's what I'm
mhm,
seeing kids are not doing is they're like, okay, I give up. I'm not going to do the extra effort it takes to figure something out. I used to work hours at my algebra. As an example. I mean,
mhm,
hours. And now I've always loved math now because of that. If I hadn't kept pushing through and trying to figure out, look at examples, ask friends or my uncle who was a great mathematician. If I didn't get help, then I'd still be back here, right? I, I,
mhm,
I, and what would that have done in my whole mindset, which we're going to talk about the
mhm.
growth mindset soon?
Sure.
Because you don't want them to have a fixed mindset. You want them to have a growth
Mhm,
mindset. So
mhm,
that helps them and later in life. Think about that. I mean, they
mhm.
won't come back to you for every little thing as a parent,
Right,
asking you
right.
to solve their problems and asking you and crying to you or possibly I mean we're seeing teen and a lot of like 20 to 25-year olds committing suicide and things like that. You want to keep them strong in their brain and in their mindset, and this
Mhm,
is just the first stepping stone really to
mhm.
that, and doing it the sooner the better. I mean, even young kids can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think resiliency is very, very important, especially in today's society. There's so many issues that you're going to come up with.
Well, and the other thing that just struck me is, as we look at so many of the challenges that we're facing societally, right? Like we're going into an election year, God help us all, right?
Right.
And I know that many of us as the adults have very clear opinions on, which side we fall on, or if we're in the middle, or if we're very clear in our decision, or we're not clear at all in our decision. Oftentimes what I've seen is that the kids will often take on the perspectives that their parents have, which is understandable because they hear parents talking. But goodness, what an opportunity to explore, like you said, to be curious, for ourselves as well. Like, you prefer candidate A, and so many of us fall into a situation where we can't fathom why anyone would prefer candidate B, whichever direction that is, right? But what a great opportunity to say to the kiddos and think, getting them to think critically, like, why might somebody like or prefer candidate B, like my non-preferred candidate? That way, it's not just about my preferences that I'm spewing that my kids are taking on, but why might somebody vote that way? Why might somebody believe differently than I do? Why might, what would it take for you? I'm outside of Denver right now. Denver's a sanctuary city for immigrants across the border. And so, I was just driving through town yesterday, and there were some folks who, there was one guy out with a sign that says, "Hey, I'm Venezuelan. I'm just trying to feed my family." There were some other guys that were walking down the street with window squeegees in their hands, offering to clean windows, right? And so maybe looking at those two juxtapositions, one's holding a sign, some would interpret that as asking for a handout, whereas the other has a squeegee, some would interpret that as being willing to work. Take that opportunity and say to the kiddos, like, I wonder what their life was like that led them to want to come to this country.
Right.
Or what would you do if you were in a new country, like things were so awful in your home country that you went to a new country? I mean, goodness, Helen, now that I'm thinking about it, there are opportunities everywhere, opportunities abound.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking about the immigration issue too, because kids are taught social studies, and I was a social studies teacher, and that is a very great issue to actually talk about. You probably don't want to talk about the abortion issue with kids, but I think them being taught these different cultures, especially in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and them understanding where these people all came from. My mom was an immigrant. And so, and the differences of mentalities and why they came here and and what about what's the good for our country and them being here, the good and the bad, right? There's good and bad to everything, right? I'll bring it up. There's good to, well, who else is doing these other jobs? Because Americans are not doing them, right? And then the bad is, well, are they committing violence or not? And they're not able to vote. They're the pros and cons. You could do the pros and cons.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. What are some other ideas? So we've got, using the questioning more than just how was your day? Fine, we're done. Incorporating, the who, what, where, when, why, like we talked about, looking at these different situations. What are some other ways that you would encourage parents to incorporate, or what are some things that they can do to continue to expand this creativity? What have you seen? What can they do?
The easiest one, especially with younger kids, is use their imagination. I mean, I find sometimes kids are so black and white and they haven't been, I guess, exposed to other things. It depends on the child. You have a lot of different kinds of kids these days, right? So a lot of them want to stay inside and be on video games. Take them out to nature and just have them use their imagination, turn off all the media, and, have them daydream. It's going to be tough for some of them, probably. I would imagine. Like, you could say, where in the world would you like to go on vacation? Talk about your summer vacation right now. Let them be in on that. And why there? Ask them why there. And what would you do when you're there? And then you're getting their ideas about what they might want to do and see anyway. Ask them if you could build anything. What would it be that you would build? These are your STEM kids, maybe. Look for connections, for patterns. This is how you get to see if your child's more of an innovator too, because it gives them ideas of, how to make inventions. I mean, these are our scientists. These are our engineers to come, possibly. A lot of them. I mean, you're saying things are going to be rapidly changing here in the next 5 years again.
Seriously. Yeah.
So I don't think we think about, as adults, asking them those kinds of questions. And yeah, you can't do it every single day necessarily because you're busy as a parent, but take a weekend to do that.
Well, no, but I think there is something that this is an opportunity for connection. Because if we ask a probing question and then we shut up, like one of the foundations of connection that we use here at Parent Tween Connection is nod and smile, like ask a question and zip it, right? And let them talk. The more that we encourage them to talk, not only is it building all of these skills that you're talking about, the critical thinking, the creativity, the ability to articulate their thoughts, the ability to think about their thoughts, to articulate them. But in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the author says we were given 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Use them proportionally. So if we set our kids up, or the idea of that is that when people have the opportunity to share their thoughts, they like the listener more.
Right. And they start to understand what they hear other people are saying.
Right.
And if we are more accepting, now we're going back to what we were just saying, right? And then we wouldn't have this tension and this argument that's even going on today in this world, right?
Exactly.
That you'll understand other people better and why they might think the way they do. And it's okay that they think differently from you.
Well, and by them giving the kids the chance to talk more, so often, I think there's still a lingering kids are meant to be seen and not heard idea in some parts of our culture. And if we give them the opportunity to voice their thoughts, they build self-esteem, they build resilience, they feel like their thoughts matter. And when you play the role of listener more than the role of speaker, they like you better, and that strengthens your connection with them.
You can even give them you can give them an easy problem to solve. Like, for instance, going back to problem solution, what would you put on a T-shirt that tells people who you are and what you believe in?
Ooh.
You can even get them a T-shirt and let them do it.
Yeah.
I think parents should.
What a cool idea.
You could do a creative hour every Sunday, at a certain time every week, or you could do it once a month, whatever. You could plug that in, and then the kids will start to know, hey, this is when we're going to do this, and then they're going to get used to it. And they'll probably get better and better at it if you keep doing it, if you set it in your calendar to do this.
Sure. And that certainly feels like something that is going to be easier to facilitate with younger kids as the kids get older and they start playing travel ball, or they're in the marching band, or they're in theater or whatever. It gets harder.
But that's why I'm thinking Sunday night, most parents are in and everything's real quiet. I know that's how it is here in Atlanta. So that's kind of a safe bet to do things like this on a Sunday at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, right before dinner, right after dinner.
Sure. What a great conversation we've had, Helen. I know you and I could talk forever. You've been with us before. I'm so glad to have you back again. We are going to wrap up this portion of our conversation, and then Helen and I are going to head over to Parent Tween Village, and we're going to talk about how these skills and what we're talking about here as we build them and develop them can help kids gain access to the gifted and talented programs in your public school system. So if you are members of Parent Tween Village, come on over to the Parent Tween Village Facebook group. If you're not yet, you can still catch the recording of this conversation. You can head over to our website at parenttweenconnection.com/Parent Tween Village, become a member, and these recordings live forever in our Facebook group and on our private YouTube channel. So come on over and join us. And Helen, if people want to reach out to you and find out more about the tutoring and the supports that you offer, can you share your website so that they can find you?
Sure. It's dynamislearningacademy.com.
Awesome.
The academy part is still in the website link in the URL. Yes.
Sure. Awesome. Helen, thank you so much. And to everybody else, have a fantastic day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.